Okay, so just a quick video on how to deal with the widget spacing within a container like this column here. So what I've got in here is a basic heading widget. I've got a text editor widget with a single paragraph, so that's just one paragraph. I've got another text editor widget with a single paragraph, and then I've got a button at the bottom. If we look at the spacing between this is all messed up. So there's a couple of ways that people deal with this, which I don't particularly agree with. So I'm going to show you some other ways of doing it. So one way of doing this is going into the layout and just setting our widget spacing to 0. And then what we have to do is go to every single widget and we have to add margin or padding on that to get what our desired result. I think that's a crazy way to do it. I think the best way to do it is leave that as it is. If you want less in your design, you can change that, but leave it so that it's a constant standard widget spacing, which sticks a margin at the bottom of each widget. Now, I'm just going to go back to my editor here and bring up my Chrome DevTools and show you what's actually going on with these. So if we look at the selector and we look at the first heading, there's no, actually it looks in here, under computed, there's no margin, there's no padding around that. But if we go up the DOM here, we go to the widget, we see we've got a 20 pixel margin at the bottom. And just a note, with the Chrome DevTools, when you use the selector here and you point at elements, as I'm doing here, it's being a bit tricky. So you get the orange at the bottom. Orange indicates margin and green indicates padding. So what we can see is we've got some margin at the bottom of this paragraph tag. We've got margin at the bottom of the widgets as well. So if we go to the actual widgets, so we've got a 20 pixel margin at the bottom of the widget. And then we've got a 14 pixel margin at the bottom of the paragraph. So these are all completely messed up as far as I can see. So one of the other ways that I see people dealing with this is they'll get the Office, for example, here, again, the advanced, go your margin and set a negative top margin, line it up where you want, go to the next one, select a negative top margin to stick that where you want. And that's just crazy as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to show you a better way, or what I believe is a better way of doing this. Just going to get rid of those margins I'll put there. All right, so we've got our standard settings here. And before I do make changes here, I'm just going to duplicate this column so you can see the difference between the changes I make here to what you would see with the standard Elementor settings. So what I use is some CSS rules, and we're going to go to that. So if I head over to my site settings and custom CSS, I'll just chuck some rules in here. I'll chuck this in the description for this video, so you can just copy and paste that if you like. So what I do is I create 3 classes. One is wpg-widget-spacing-none, spacing small, and spacing medium. So I then target the elementor widget, which is what's giving us the 20 pixel margin between them, unless it's the last element. And I set the margin bottom to 0 for none, 0.5 rem for small, and 1 rem for medium. You can set these to whatever you like that works with your design. I then, for every one of those classes, I'm looking for a widget container that's got a P tag, which will be in here, and I'm looking for the last of type. So what I want is, if I've got a text editor here and I've got multiple paragraphs, I'll leave the standard 1 rem, whatever it is, margin at the bottom of the paragraph. So we've got spacing between the items within that. But if it's the last P, I want no margin at the bottom whatsoever, so that everything lines up correctly. So that's pretty much the CSS. So I'm just going to copy that there. I'm going to show you the effect that this has. So if I go to, I'm just going to minimize that a little bit, go to this column, and I add that class of none. I've now got no spacing at the bottom, so I've got no margin. So if I look at my widgets, up here to that widget, I've got 0 margin at the bottom. If I go to the this here, which is the text editor, I've got 0 margin at the bottom. And if I go to the paragraph tag, which is the last one in there, I've got no margin at the bottom. So if I wanted this to have a little bit of spacing, I would set that to small. You see how that's now got a little bit of spacing in there. So if I look at the P's, we've still got no margin on the last one. If I look at the widget, I've got a 8 pixel margin. And if we look at the reason for that, where are we, styles? So now my rule of wpg-widget-spacing-small has got a 0.5 rem margin. So I'll make that medium. And I've got a medium margin, which will be 1 rem. Okay, so that's pretty much what I would do. And you can see here by doing that, you're not affecting the standard widget spacing. So you could have like anything in there. So you could have, maybe it's image elements or an accordion or whatever you stick in there. We're not going to affect that global setting of a 20 pixel margin between all elements that are not the last one in that container. And we can still have control over how this looks without having to stick negative margin on all these things and making it extremely confusing for the layout. And that's pretty much what I do, and I think that's a good way of doing it. So hopefully you'll agree, and hopefully that's useful for you.